If I'm a restoration business owner and I'm hearing this and I'm going, well, it happens to other people, eventually it's going to happen to me. Can you give some advice? How do you start putting that contingency plan together? What do they need to be thinking about right now as we're going into the new year on, hey, we got to be prepared in case something like this happens?
Make sure you are asking the question. Now you will have 3 different scenarios that you can ask your broker about the next time you meet. What happens when there's a fire and there's a total loss? What happens to the contents of the people that we are serving? What happens if we have a tornado?
Make sure you understand what the value of is all the equipment is in your office space, in your warehouse space.
During this experience, how did you handle cash flow? How did you categorize income versus expenses as you went through the process?
For us, we set up a separate account that we deposited all of our insurance proceeds into. We had a separate GL account.
On a personal level, what was the hardest part of going through this experience?
Where the heck are we going to go?
If you had to go through it all over again, knowing what you know right now, what is the one decision that you would do differently? Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Violand's GPS podcast, Growing Professional Skills. I am your host, Jeff Jones, and this is going to be a really unique session. We have 4 restoration industry professionals here who all have something in common that we've asked to come on and talk about their personal experience. From Woodard Restoration over in Kansas City, we have Justin Woodard. Rhett and Jason, business partners at Green Clean up in Minnesota, and one of my all-time favorite people in the disaster restoration industry, the amazing Miss Tammy Stokes over at ODR, Oklahoma Disaster Restoration. Thank you, everybody, for being on the podcast today.
Good to be here.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So what makes all of you, the reason we've got all of you on today is to talk about this. We come from the restoration industry. We're all good at drying out buildings or doing some version of recon or something in between all of that. But what happens when the disaster hits your own facility? And that's a big, big paradigm shift. And what we have here is 3 different restoration companies who suffered significant loss at their main facility. And we want to talk through what that experience was like. So if that ever happens to you, you're going to be in a better position for it. Justin, I want to start with you. If you want to just do a quick introduction, let everybody know what happened to your building.
Okay. Well, thanks again for having me. Just quickly to set the record straight. So Woodard Cleaning and Restoration, we're actually in St. Louis, Missouri, not Kansas City. We love our Kansas City folks.
Sorry about that.
Our business is a 3rd-generation business. My grandparents, Grandma and Grandpa, Earl and Nancy Woodard, they started the business in 1946. My dad ran the company for 30 years after that with his brother, and then I bought the company almost 10 years ago now. Our experience to share today happened on February 17th, 2019. We had a fire in our, which after this many years, I can say, ironically, in our fire and contents cleaning facility. It was about a 50,000 square foot warehouse, and it had a 22-foot clear ceiling, 20-inch I-beams that were twisted and on the ground. We had 35 families that we were storing the contents for. That means we had 35 families that went through a second fire, which was our fire. And we spent a long time cleaning up, but also connecting with each of those families. I went and visited every single family personally, and we went through the loss and experienced the loss together. The entire building, about 85% of it was a total loss, and we actually picked apart the building. So we pulled off the roof, picked it apart, and we were able to salvage at least a couple of items from every single one of the families, though most of the contents were actually lost.
Big job. That's
wow.
Yeah, we're going to dive into that one. I imagine there's a lot of work there. Jason and Rhett, tell us a little bit about what you had going on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can start off. We're both co-owners of Green Clean. We started in 1996, so we're moving into our 30th year here. And we primarily do water, smoke, and fire damage restoration. We don't do any contents work, but we do a fair amount of like carpet cleaning, that sort of thing. So in our facility, in our warehouse facility, which is, I think, maybe around 4,500 square feet is what that is, we had a garbage can start on fire, and that was on March 20th of this year. And basically what it did is when it started on fire, it climbed up a set of shelvings in the back of the warehouse. And when the fire and the heat reached the sprinkler, it set off the sprinkler system. So I got a call at about 9:20 at night. I was actually getting ready to go to bed, and I got a call from our security company saying that the alarms had gone off and there was a lot of smoke. So I went right into the shop, and there was about 10 fire trucks sitting out in front of our shop, and 2 of them behind the shop. They had to break the door down and get into the facility, and luckily they were able to get the fire put out. So we had, only not a huge amount of structural damage, but we had a fair amount of just overall smoke damage, soot damage throughout the entire facility, which basically caused us to have to completely move everything out and restore the entire facility and then move back in. So that's kind of an overview of what we were dealing with.
Tammy, I know yours is a little bit different. If you want to let everybody know.
Yep, we were hit by a tornado because we live in Tornado Alley. And what had happened that night is we had a guy who was out on a board up call, and he said that he could sense the rain was coming, and he was wrapping up his job and headed back to the shop. And he said as he drove up to the building, he saw the trees in his rearview mirror just kind of lay over, and he was like, I need to get in the shop and get into protection. So he opened the van door, and as he ran to the building, he was picked up by the tornado and slammed up against the building and passed out. Then we had the tornado. It came, it was about a 6-mile stretch through Tulsa, and it took off our roof. And it rained inside our building. It took off about half of it, and we had a significant property loss, a significant personal property, and then we had 4 families who had stuff that had been actually in a recent tornado, and we had all their stuff spread out because when we had packed it out, it was kind of a grab and run. We brought it here to the shop, had it all spread out, was letting it dry before we started our inventory process to get that. So ours is a little similar to Justin's in that other people had gone through that second loss, which is just terrible. Thank goodness we had good insurance.
So Tammy, did you, after that, when you went to start repairing the damage with that, did you self-manage that, or did you sub that out to another restoration company?
Well, it was quite an interesting situation because since this tornado was, 6 miles long, it's affecting it was about a half a mile wide, and it hit a large, I think we had 600 businesses and 100 houses in the area that were affected. And so we knew we had a mild loss in 2013. This particular one was in 2017. And during that one in 2013, we tried to self-manage. And so we didn't send our guys out to some really significant losses that were out there. And when we tried to recover on the insurance side, they eliminated everything that was profit. So we could only bill our labor people at their labor rate. We could bill any fans and DUs at the cost that they cost us, which we already had them, so we got nothing on that. And they wouldn't allow us to do our repairs to the building. So when this tornado came, I knew that the only way for us to, like, there would be no business loss income if we didn't have a contract that we lost. And so we immediately had our crews come in. We had the window people replace windshields on our vehicles. We had 8 vehicles that were a total loss. We had tires put on because we had a lot of flat tires. And we went out to service customers, and we had we were meeting at the Home Depot parking lot to dispatch our crews, because we knew that we had to capitalize on this. So I ended up hiring one of my competitors to come in and dry us out.
Nice. Well, I think we're going to jump into that here and kind of learn what that experience was like. Justin, yours sounds like you handled yours internally.
We did. Now that so technically there was a different building owner. The entity that owned the building, I actually own that entity also, and the loss was sustained by that entity. So I hired Woodard Cleaning and Restoration to do the repairs and cleanup of the facility. And so we navigated, that kind of the nuance there of, you can't profit from your own loss by, having those multiple entities involved. But again, a lot of it was, when I think about the scope of the project, we had, one part of the scope was actually cleaning and drying out this very large brick structure that was actually salvageable. And so that was the clearest place where we hired Woodard to clean up, dry out, and then, deodorize and clean all of the soot on that structure inside. And then we got that ready, and that ultimately we were able to demo the rest of it and sell the property with just that building. But then we also, Woodard was hired to do we hired Woodard to clean the contents that we could too, but that was just a very minor, by the time we got the building, kind of picked apart, and we pulled all the vaults out and inspected them, the amount of contents that we were able to salvage was pretty minor. And so that really wasn't, whether we had a profit on that or not, was just not, it wasn't really meaningful to the size of the loss. But then we didn't do any repairs or rebuilding, right? So we demoed everything except for the one, brick facility that was salvageable. And then we actually sold the property, and then we I hired Woodard to put together a reconstruction scope so as if we were going to rebuild the building. And then I negotiated with the insurance company a settlement for the repairs, and got that, utilized that, those funds to buy a new facility in which we did a pretty major renovation on.
Nice. Jason, how about you guys?
Throw me the question again, just to make sure I'm on the right track.
After the fire, did you self-manage that loss, or did you sub that out to a competitor?
We self-managed almost everything except for the contents. We hired the contents out to another local company. We had a portion of time where we thought maybe we could handle it ourselves, but then once we really started getting into it and realizing all the moving parts, it made more sense to bring in another company to do that, and we were really glad that we did. Our space was a lease space, so we were already dealing with 2 different insurance companies, our own, and then obviously the building insurance. So there was a lot of moving parts there, and so it made the most sense to do that with the contents. But we ended up doing all the cleaning and the rebuild on our own structure through the process.
So looking at the three different experiences that you had, and everything always comes back to customer service. Open dialogue. What was it like going through this now on the other end of it and experiencing either customer service from your own company or from a competitor? What were some of the biggest lessons you learned from it, and what did it cause you to improve on the back end moving forward?
I can say that seeing the insurance summary papers and trying to understand the papers that they were sending out and the payments that went with that. For us, we had payments on the business, personal property of others, the mitigation and the reconstruction of the building, as well as deductions for non-recoverable depreciation, and our deductible. And just learning all of that paperwork was truly eye-opening for me, because when we handle claims, we're dealing with customers and we know exactly how much we billed and the insurance said they paid it, and so we just pursue the customer to pay that. When you see it on the other side, it was like I was certainly able, after I learned, I was able to explain to customers how complicated those papers are, and how, we many times will now request a customer to send us all of their papers so that we can try to interpret what money have they really been paid. That was one thing I learned.
What about you guys?
I think the thing that stands out for me is what happens to different types of people in the immediate aftermath of a disaster, when you lose something so impactful, and the projections and the fears that begin running through your mind. Our loss happened in the middle of the night. I got a call, in the 1 o'clock in the morning, and drove myself the 20 minutes or so to get to the building. And all I knew was that it was on fire, and the fire departments were there. And, that by dawn, I was starting to think about, like, okay, well, how do we, this actually could end up being, we could find a way to make this a net positive, right? Like, we're going to have to rebuild, we're going to have to repair. I know this is going to take a long time, but I was already beginning to imagine what we could do to have an even better facility and have an, even more positive experience for our people. Well, quickly I started talking to a couple of the team members that had shown up, and they were freaked out. They were like, well, are we going to close the fire service line? Like, how are we going to do our work? Do I have a job still? What am I going to do tomorrow? Like, how are we going to get paid? And so I, seeing all of the different reactions and responses across a large gamut. I mean, for a family, you may have 3, 4, 5, 6 people, right? We had dozens of people, and everybody was having a different reaction. So we actually got a kind of a master class in what are the different responses that could happen, and then how do we react to those. And one of the the best things that we were able to do is, in that, right before it was Saturday night, so it was going into Sunday, and so we weren't going to work, but we knew by Sunday people were going to start waking up, people were going to just start talking to each other, and everybody would know by 8 o'clock in the morning that the building burned down. So I got in a room with a long-term employee. Her name was Mary Daniels, and she was able to, in her, her unique gift is being able to experience, have empathy and experience things from a lot of different perspectives. And so she was able to talk to people and then channel all of the fears and concerns And we wrote them all down on a whiteboard. And we then spent about an hour crafting a message that did the best that we could to address every single concern and fear that we possibly could think of. And we were able to get a communication out to the whole company relatively early on Sunday morning. And I think, that to me, that's like, that is our job as service providers, right? We're going to show up and we need to be able to understand the concerns. We need to understand how we're going to add value. We need to understand what the biggest fear is, what the biggest, the top thing on someone's mind at that moment. And that might be sitting with them, right? That they just need to sit for a second. It might be, oh my gosh, we have to save that thing right there. We have to do something right now. Or it may be talking about the whole process. What's going to happen? Where is it going to go? How long is it going to take? Right? We just have to be really in tune to it. So I think me going through it in a different way actually helped me really appreciate our team and how well they are able to navigate every single customer that is a little bit different, and be able to sit with them in just the right way to make sure that they're helping.
Kind of got to flex the situational leadership muscles right there.
Right.
So, Rhett, Jason, it's an interesting point on how the employees are going to take this of, do I still have a job? What's my role moving forward? Am I going to get paid? Is this business going to survive? Did you get any kind of pushback from your customers or from your referring agents saying, well, I can't send you any business right now because I'm not sure you guys are still in business?
Yeah, I'll let Rhett handle this one.
Yeah, I think we got pretty lucky in that regard. I think the biggest thing is our employees, even though it's one of our core values, having gone through this ourselves, it really impacted the amount of empathy that we show for a client when they're going through this. Because, for us, it was just stuff, right? Because it's a business. But for a homeowner, it's their personal belongings, it's their memories, it's their livelihood. So for us to go through that and see how painful it was, even when it didn't affect us personally, it's made us a lot better, stronger company. And I think, the team really pulled together, and we got very fortunate. There was a vacancy in our same complex that we were able to move into within about a week or two. So we were able to operate nonstop, even while this was going. So we basically just treated it as another job. However, instead of having our managers manage it, me and Jason pretty much managed this project to keep it off their plates.
Did anybody have any kind of plans in place prior to this disaster happening?
We had no contingency plan that would have accounted for losing a whole facility.
So going through this, if I'm a restoration business owner and I'm hearing this and I'm going, well, it happens to other people, eventually it's going to happen to me. Can you give some advice? How do you start putting that contingency plan together? What do they need to be thinking about right now as we're going into the new year on, hey, we got to be prepared in case something like this happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a cost. I don't know. I mean, we could go around real quick. I mean, it sounds like, we've got 2 out of 3 for sure. Like, we didn't lose a beat, right? Like, I mean, this is our job, right? Responding to the disaster, responding to the emergency, responding to the situation that is right in front of us, and doing the best that you can with what you got. I mean, our teams do this every single day. We as well. We had a content cleaning area spun up the next day in one of our other facilities. It was, it was small and not what we were used to, but it served the purpose. We were able to find a facility about 45,000 square feet within about 8 miles of our current facility, and we got that rented within a couple of weeks. We built out the whole content cleaning center there while we, did the rest of the cleanup and then searched for our future home. And so I think being able to know that something like this could happen and do activities to prevent it, I think I would invest there as opposed to trying to imagine all of the scenarios. So I think making sure you have good insurance, right? That would be a place where I would start. Having a review when you're reviewing with your broker, make sure you are asking the question. Now you will have 3 different scenarios that you can ask your broker about the next time you meet. What happens when there's a fire and there's a total loss? What happens to the contents of the people that we are serving? What happens if we have a tornado? What is a wind? What does our wind policy look like? What happens if we are leasing a building and we set the dang thing on fire? Like, is there liability? Like, what, like, how do they separate? Like, there's all sorts of wonderful questions that you could ask just this podcast. And we're just three people. So I think the biggest thing I would recommend after, when I look back, like what served us really well, it was my dad and Debbie and myself and a couple others at Woodard asking scenario questions to the broker during the reviews, right? If the broker says, we want to go in for mid-year review, always say yes. And then think about the last 10 losses that you had at businesses, the last 10 commercial losses, tell them to the broker and say, what does our policy say? And then document it. We had multiple situations where we had documented conversations with our broker, and they told us what was in the policy and they said it wrong, or they bound the wrong stuff, right? And having those regular conversations and having that documented saved our bacon, because there were a couple things that the broker screwed up, and we had documentation that it was their fault, and we got the coverage that we were sold, essentially. So I think that's what I would recommend, is just make sure you prepare and make sure you know what your insurance coverages are and where the limits are, where the boundaries are, what it actually means to the scenarios that could actually happen.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And I would just add on top of like what Justin was saying, when you're looking at your business insurance, I know it's painful and it's hard to do, but make sure you understand what the value of is all the equipment is in your office space, in your warehouse space, with your non-scheduled tools and equipment and your scheduled tools and equipment. Because I know, like on our end, we did an okay job of it. But when we really started to go through things, we saw like things on our equipment that should have been scheduled that weren't. And when push came to shove, like at the end of the day, luckily we had just enough coverage and we're okay. But if we had done it a little bit differently before we had the claim, I would have spent more time on that. And I probably would have had another $50,000 or so of coverage there just to make sure there was enough. And going through this experience was very eye-opening for us in that business insurance side.
Yeah, and especially if you have built out your facility or made improvements to it, understanding that comes out of your bucket of insurance money and not the building owner, right? So making sure that you have plenty of coverage, because we had a fair amount of damage on our betterment, but if it would have been a total loss, we wouldn't have had enough.
So going in, you're talking about, boy, I wish I would have had $50,000 more. And in our industry, cash is king, and everybody's fighting to get paid all the time, and it gets real easy to get behind in cash flow and hard to catch up sometimes. So during this experience, how did you handle cash flow? How did you categorize income versus expenses as you went through the process?
I can say that for us, we set up a separate account that we deposited all of our insurance proceeds into, and we had a separate GL account that we had, and ours kind of crossed over into a second year because it happened in August and we weren't finished until April. And so what we did is we put all of ours into one general ledger account, and at the end of the year we kept it on the balance sheet until the very end. And at the very end, we had to make sure that there was no money left in that account, so that we didn't have a profit or loss taken out of there.
Did you guys do something similar?
Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
Oh no, if you got an answer,
I kind of brought this question up to begin with because I was a little bit curious about what other companies did. We were actually, when we went into the process, luckily our consultant recommended to us, hey, make sure everything that's going out as expenses and everything that's coming in as expenses or as income, that you have it set up in separate accounts. And I was really, really glad for that advice, because now as we're moving through the claims process and getting things wrapped up, it's really easy for me to know exactly what money went where. We already had an account that we kind of weren't using, so we used that. But I was having a little bit of difficulty with how I set up the accounts originally, just because they were showing up on my P&L. So
that's what happened to us. It was on our P&L, and as I was getting close to year end, I was like, I am not paying an income tax on this, but my tax accountant would make me if I didn't have it. So that's why we moved everything over to the balance sheet.
Yeah. Well, thank you for confirming that, because that's what we just did too with the advice of our accountant. She was like, you need to get that out of here because we got to see how things are looking at the end of the year. So that financial aspect of getting the advice from Violand and then figuring out where to put those accounts was instrumental for us in making sure that we're managing the cash properly.
Yeah, I think the two maybe little differences. So Debbie Bogart, 30-year veteran of the industry and in accounting, like she managed the whole process, right? And so I can't speak to the exact details of whether it was a GL account or whatnot, but like it didn't. So I don't want to speak on something I don't really know the exact details, but I think the thing that made ours a little bit different is ours was multi-year. So 2 weeks ago, I got an email, and of the 35 families, only 2 of them was there a problem, and one of them had a big problem. We don't have time to go into that one, but if we want to go get a beer sometime, I'll tell you all about it. That family ultimately sued the insurance company, and through all sorts of other things, we got word 2 weeks ago that thing closed. And so the last part, so 2019, the last part of the claim closed 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Right. So 6 years, right?
Yeah.
And so what I will say is when we're talking, and the other thing that is different is we didn't move back into the building and we lost everything, right? From an equipment perspective, there were multiple vehicles inside the build. I mean, it was just, and I will tell you, we actually had adequate. We had more than enough insurance coverage, and so our because we left that building and we went and bought a new building that was twice as big, and we moved all the rest of the company into that building. There was no question we were going to spend more money, right? So our main activity was documenting what was lost, and then submitting that and making sure that we could get reimbursed from the insurance company when we bought those things. But otherwise, we were just settling it, we needed to get to a number that we were happy with. And we didn't really, I know we did some detail. I know Debbie did some details at a significant level to make sure that we didn't make money on the loss. But because of how much money we spent rebuilding, there's just there was no question that we were not making money because of this fire. Even if you count doing a couple $100,000 water and smoke job, like it still wasn't we didn't make any money for sure.
So I want to ask a couple questions here. First is going to be more on a personal note, and the second one's going to be more focused on the team. On a personal level, what was the hardest part of going through this experience? Was it the emotional attachment to the building? Was it the stress on the business? Was it the lessons you had to learn?
I've been in this building for over 20 years, and I've been in the business for 30. And during our what happened in our water loss, we had a lot of water damage to old 35 millimeter printed photos of all of my clients that I've had, since 1995. And I had them in these beautiful shoe boxes that we had, and I had a library of old restoration magazines and reference books, and that room was completely rained on, and it had tornado throw up all over it. It was just nasty, and it was really, really sad and difficult for me to go through that loss and throw those things away. And it was actually very helpful to have that other company in there just saying, you have to throw this away. I already knew it, but it was really hard.
Dang, Tammy, I'm so sorry about that.
What about you guys?
I think just the initial shock of it, for the first probably week, that's pretty much all I thought about. So there again, it kind of leads, to having gone through something that our clients are going through, makes us much more understanding of that.
Did it change your view of empathy with your customers at all?
Yeah, I think so because, like I said, for us, it was just stuff. We didn't have anything real personal that we lost. But knowing that people are doing that like Tammy did, yeah, it definitely adds that level.
How about you, Justin?
I think the two things that come to mind, one would be the first couple of families that I went and visited. Those were really hard in that I was just scared out of my mind. Like I was thinking they were gonna be aggressive and start, blame me and all this stuff. And so I was really nervous about those. And I don't remember exactly how many it took, but after 3 or 4, I had the same reaction every single time with the homeowners. And they looked at Woodard as a victim. And it was a wonderful, you have those blurbs every once in a while. The news will get it right, and they'll share something about humanity that kind of makes your heart sing. And that's ultimately what I ended up experiencing with our customers, who, I felt we let down, but again, it was, they kind of opened my eyes that it wasn't my fault. This was not something that was supposed to happen. It was a freak accident. And, that was really hard. And then the second thing that I think I actually had more angst, like an anxiety about for a longer period of time was like, where the heck are we going to go? It took us, the fire happened in February of 2019. I didn't do the deal to buy the new building until April of 2020. And the only reason I was able to do that deal is because COVID happened. We identified the building that we wanted in August, and I was negotiating for months and months and months with these folks out in California, and I couldn't get the deal done. And at the end of March 2020, when everything started to shut down, that kind of turmoil in the world allowed me to be able to come to the table and say, hey, I will close in 2 weeks. All this other stuff aside, I still need a building. And so if you're concerned about the future, or you're concerned about what's happening now, I can take one thing off your plate and I can do this deal, and we've got cash and we will close. And that was the only thing that I don't know how we would have done it without that moment. And again, it's one of these moments we come back to, like, how do you prepare for COVID? It's like, be a restoration contractor. We were so prepared. We don't know what next quarter is going to be anyway. We don't know what water job we're going to get tomorrow. And, all these businesses were had all this uncertainty about the future and their sales and what was going to happen. And, I'm looking around at my friends in the industry saying, oh, look, everybody has to deal with what we have to deal with. This is great. And, Yeah, and so that like that, but that middle time, right from the end of the summer, we were really thinking we needed to have something identified by the end of the summer if we had any hope in doing a remodel before basically our ALE was allowing us to pay for this other facility. And we were staring down the end of that time and really needed a building. That was probably the most stressful thing that I experienced, was just where are we going to go? Because there was not a whole bunch of properties that one were available or the right size and geography for our people.
So looking at it then from a personal standpoint, switch it and put it over to the team. Going through the experience and seeing where your team rose and did exceptional, and I'm sure there were some areas where it was a learning lesson for them, and hopefully they could get better off of it. What did you see from your team? How did it fall back into the core values? What did you learn, and how did they grow and impress you?
You want to grab that one, Rhett?
Well, I just think that, everybody was going through the same thing. So everybody kind of pulled together as a team. I think it made us a stronger team coming out of it. I think that, we don't do a ton of commercial. So there was a lot of learning curve for our team in that regard too. So it was kind of a good experience to practice on our own facility.
For my team, it was, I think it was good for them to see Jay and I really just get into the trenches and make some very strong decisions about the leadership and about us going out and saying, you go out and get these jobs and you service those customers, and you don't think about what's going on at home. You just focus on your customer. And I think that just helped them in life in general. It helped them exemplify, what, our core values are, perseverance, we're going to stick to it until we get this job done. And the response and urgency, that's another core value. And they saw it in action. And I think it helped make us stronger. And that was that year. I mean, we ended up capitalizing on $1.7 million of restoration just from the tornado alone,
Yeah, I think I'd add, the team showed up in, pretty remarkable ways. I mean, I think what stands out to me is through the quantity of different people at Woodard that worked on our loss was significant. And our loss turned into a huge construction project. And though we hired a general contractor, ultimately, I hired a general contractor to do the construction project, all of the design and a huge amount. I mean, there's still we put the roof on, we gutted the whole building. We designed all of the spaces. And, when I think back on the different steps throughout the whole process, we got to use the whole team. Right. I mean, and everybody showed up. And, when you come through our building now, I mean, I love bringing folks into our new facility because it is the product of hundreds of years of experience in restoration, all coming together with a clean slate, all being, in an environment where we all work together to do the design. We all had input. And I had some of the best people in the industry sharing their dreams of how a content facility, they would like to have it set up, and how, how they would do logistics in the fleet and with all of the equipment and all of our supplies, and, the trash, how would we get rid of trash, and how would we how would we dump our waste tank, across the whole thing. And so when I think about the team, I think, what an amazing group of people that came together to do something really, really impressive. But then also, the team gets to experience it every day. right? And so I think there's a lot of pride at Woodard because of what we were able to accomplish afterwards. And, it's one
I
of
love
those things that you only can do if you have a traumatic experience together. Like it's at that level. And it is the simultaneous, it's kind of the paradox of life. You don't wish it on anybody. And I'd do it again, right? Like, I mean, it's not, we are better, stronger, more set up for the future. All of those things are true. And we went through this really horrific experience.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Let me finish on one final question for you. Now we've heard everybody's stories, and it sounds like I think Rhett and Jason and Tammy would say the same thing, that coming out of it, you're bigger, better, stronger. Lessons learned, which is that's really what our industry is supposed to be about. So hearing that is outstanding. Looking back on it, if you had to go through it all over again, knowing what you know right now, what is the one decision that you would do differently? And if you don't have one that you say for sure I would do differently, what's the one decision that you're the most proud of? Tammy, I'm going to have you lead that one off.
I'm trying to think if there was anything that I would do differently. And I think something I wanted to mention earlier was we had a lot of contents that we just kind of kept around and had sitting around, and old fans that were broken, and old truck mounts up on a shelf. And our insurance adjuster was calling out the co-insurance term. And when I learned what that was, I knew that was going to be pretty detrimental to us. So I think I would definitely clean up my shop and get rid of old stuff. That would be something I would do differently. Of course, that would be before the loss. But I was really proud of, and I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is that we hadn't ever done a commercial water loss. And when our team saw how easy it was to set up to dry a commercial loss in a large space that's open to the world, I think it opened their eyes and mine to, hey, we can do a commercial loss, And so I think that was one of the things, being able to hire my competitor and see how they did it. I was like, okay, we could do this.
Nice. Jason, Rhett, how about you guys?
Yeah, how about I do proud and Rhett can do what we would have done differently. I would say, I was proud of me and Rhett and how we kind of just took the reins and tried to keep as much of the fire loss off of our management, because we didn't really need to stop our business operations and we had every intention of doing every job that we possibly could. I think that was a good leadership role. And I would specifically call out Rhett on that, because I work a lot more in the day-to-day of the company than Rhett does. So Rhett really took the lead on that and made this process go as smoothly as it possibly could. So I'm proud of us for that. And of course, I'm proud of our team. They all stepped up to the plate, and every one of them stuck with us the whole way through the process. So that's what I've got on that.
Yeah, I think might have handled how we did the contents a little bit differently. We don't do contents. It's a line that we may add at some point. But that was kind of a nightmare. But, I guess I'm just fortunate that we have a management team in place that I had the time. I was able to do it where it didn't really affect, the day to day. So Jason kind of stepped up in that area, and I was able to take care of this. So.
How about you, Justin?
The change question is an interesting one. I'm sure there's some things that I would probably do a little differently. I haven't really given it too much thought. So I'm really not sure what decision I would change if I could go back. There are quite a few things that I'm proud of, and we've covered several of them, right? Like visiting all the customers, the design, creating an environment where the team of experts with experience measured in the decades could come together and build a space for the industry. Having that space end up being a place that's really inviting for the community, where we can host all sorts of different events. We can bring people in and have a gathering place for our employees. The community that is created in this physical space, I'm really, really proud of. Matterport also comes to mind, right? I don't know how many people use this technology. I think it's, there's others like it, but having a digital record that's a 3-dimensional space, representation of your space with all the stuff in it that's another one of those kind of lessons learned. Having that documentation of your house and of your business, highly recommend. We did a Matterport after the fire also, which is a really interesting record of the loss. And we actually went back to that multiple times, finding things. It's like, how many of those did we have? And so we went in and did a Matterport as soon as the fire department let us. And then the thing I kind of alluded to it, but I'll describe it in one last detail. We hired a wrecking company to do the demo. And like I described earlier, these are enormous I-beams and the whole roof is on the floor and it's all metal. It is a disaster. We have hundreds of vaults all underneath all this stuff. And we knew we could go in there with the bulldozers and just put it all in dumpsters and cart it all away. But we also felt an obligation to the customer. And so we created a scope of work with the demo contractor in which they actually brought in some specialized equipment to actually pull the roof off of everything and actually open the building like a can opener. And they pulled all of the debris from the roof and all of the I-beams in the ceiling, and they pulled them off. And then we had a forklift driver that was able to go in and actually then move out all of the vaults as the stuff was taken off. And the vaults had a fire retardant spray. So they're just like yours. They're all wooden and they were in a incredibly hot fire. If you can bring the whole roof down, that's metal, right? And we saved like 2/3 of the vaults were still intact. You would have thought they all would have burned just to ash. And we saved tons and tons of these vaults. So if you don't have fire retardant on your vaults, I'd highly recommend that too. But the main thing here is like we made the decision to put our customers first. We spent a little bit more money to pull apart the building, and that allowed us to get the vaults out. We were able to open them up, and we were able to clean and dry something from every single family that shared in our loss, and which was their second loss. So I'm really proud that we were able to kind of push back on the insurance company and take the extra time to demo in a way that ultimately, got something nostalgic back for our customers, if nothing really of value.
That's pretty cool. Well, I want to thank you all for being on the podcast today very much, hearing the stories and what you learned and passing that on to everybody. Thank you for your time, for your expertise. And with this, we've got a group of very passionate restorers. We've got great business people here on this podcast. These are people that you want to get to meet and know. I would highly recommend the Restoration Industry Association's conference 2026 in April in Savannah, Georgia. Justin, I'm positive you will be there. That's kind of your role there. Yep. Tammy, I know, another one dedicated to be there. Jason and Rhett, absolutely. If you want to meet them and pick their brains, not just on this subject, but on anything. That's the whole point of that show. And these are 4 people you definitely want to get to meet, and that's a great opportunity to do so. So please check out the Restoration Industry Association's annual conference in April 2026, Savannah, Georgia. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time, and look forward to seeing everybody again soon.
What a great time. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Jeff. See you.